Hello, everyone, and welcome to the M8-ing podcast, the podcast where two mates openly talk about their life experiences and parenthood. Steve, what are we talking about today, mate?
Well, there are three particular areas we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the smelly, which is a very clever play on words, if I must say so myself. A very famous film, which everyone's heard of. So, yeah, three particular areas. The good, so we're going to talk about what's great about being a parent, what do we genuinely love about it. We're talking about the bad, so what's the other side of that coin? How does it affect you in certain ways, which people don't typically talk about? And then we're going to talk about the smelly, which I don't feel like I need to describe, but we're going to talk about it anyway. So let's talk about the good. Let's kick that off. Sid, what is great about being a parent?
I think it's almost easier to start with the bad, Steve, but I'll give it a crack.
Wow. Okay. I hope Sam's listening to this.
Should probably cut it there, to be honest. Yeah. No, honestly, there's tons of good things about being a parent. I would say some of the best things is obviously around seeing him develop into a little human now. He's got a lot more, he's 3.5, he's got a lot more characteristics. He's starting to become his own individual person. He's got his own little quirks and jokes and mimics me in every way, shape or form. I'll give you an example. Every morning I see him, he wakes up around 7 o'clock, he comes to his door, calling for me, by the way. So it makes my heart melt instantly. He's like, Daddy. And before I'll be like, no, I don't want to get out of bed. But now I'm like, yeah, I'll get out of bed. He's like, can we make coffees together? And I'm like, yes.
Of course we can.
We can make coffees together, son. You can have anything you want. Just want to say now, I'm not giving him coffee.
I'd like to think he hasn't got you that wrapped around his little finger. You're just giving him caffeine.
He sees Daddy have a coffee in the morning, and then he wants the same as what I've got. So I make him a hot chocolate. So that's become our own little thing, right? And we have coffees in the morning. And if we go to Starbucks or any other coffee shop, he'll walk in and he'll order his own drink. He'll order a baby chino, which is like a hot chocolate, a warm hot chocolate suitable for kids. So we've all got our little coffee cups. It's super adorable.
You're introducing him to the traits of addiction at an early age, which is great.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm a terrible father, but
yes.
It makes my heart melt. So I think that, again, so I think it's very generic because there's lots of things that, again, a lot of it comes down to feelings. In terms of how, there's a newfound sense of purpose in life as well, which again you'll never experience outside of not knowing what having a kid is like. So it's quite difficult to try and explain it. But I think that before having a kid, I would say I was a quite driven person. But now seeing all the hard work that I'm putting into my children and watching them develop and become polite human beings. I think there's no better feeling for it. I think there's a newfound purpose in life that I've started to experience. So what about yourself?
Yeah, I think just to hit on before I carry on, the being polite part, I feel like that really represents you as a person when they use manners. So Oscar, when he's prompted, will say, thank you, please, or pardon me, when he burps. But now I think it's a game because he burps on purpose just so he can say pardon me. So it's actually quite a bit of a vicious cycle. But when they do use manners and stuff, and people go, aren't you polite? You kind of as if you've done something personally, but it's I know, I'm so great. So no,
are you then giving him like a little sweet or something like that after but mate, but
bribery the entire time. I think, and you kind of just touched on it briefly in your last example, so I'm just feeding off yours, but he can't wait to see you. He can't wait to see me at all. Whenever I come back from work, he hears the key at the door and he's like, who's at the door? Who's at the door? Who's at the door? And you could hear him the other side. And, he's like, it's Daddy.
Is he disappointed?
And he's so excited. And it's like, in a previous life,
it's Dad.
Oh, his dad.
Who is it? Oh, it's his dad. Yeah.
That'll be later in life. He'll be like, "Who's at the door? Oh God, it's that dick again." That'll definitely happen later in life. But for now, and I'm going to hold on to it. He can't wait to see me. And then again, in a previous life before him, I would get home from work, probably miserable, sit on the sofa, and just, probably bore Charlotte to death about my crap day. Instead, I get home and I'm genuinely buzzing because he's there, and it's like wicked. It's really, really cool. So, and like nothing like epitomized that more than when I came home I was away last week with work in America. Charlotte and Oscar met me at the airport, and Charlotte's filmed it, and I come through the terminal and he's there and he waits and he runs up to me, and I don't like sob, but a tear definitely comes down because it's just the most brilliant. Don't laugh at me. Okay?
No, sweet.
It's just,
I was in that moment with you.
Feeling, and he gave me a cuddle, and it was brilliant. So I think that kind of, regardless of how much of a dick you are in real life, they may figure that out when they get older, but for right here and now, it's an amazing feeling.
You get that every day. I think there's something that you mentioned there, like before having a child, you would go back and you would just live life on repeat. So you would do the same thing over and over again. Every day now with a child, you're creating new memories. It's one thing after another, and they're continuously evolving. So you're seeing stuff happen every single day about that child or your child changing. And it's just, it's one of the, again, as you said, we sort of spoke about it before, but it's quite it's a vague question. When you say around, what's the good things? And you actually have to, being a parent's great. You instantly, that's your reaction to go to, being a parent's great. And then when you break it down, it's like, what is really good about it? What actually is? Because there's tons exactly. of great stuff. But I think
I'm talking over you. Sorry about that.
Go on.
I think that you spot on, and it is that vagueness and what we wanted to do, right, was talk about something tangible that was like, this is a live example of why it is so good. So no, I totally get that. I think the next one I had down was just that, and again, it's very personal, but it's like everything he says is funny. Like everything he says is funny. And, I imagine it's a scenario where I would find it hilarious, but if I explain the same story to someone else, they wouldn't find it funny. But, literally everything is. So for example, the other day, I just walked into our bedroom and there's the washing basket there, and he's taking out clothes out of the washing basket and going, "Oh, that's a big one. Put that in the wash. Put that in the wash." And he doesn't know what he's doing. He's just seen. I mean, I don't know why, Charlotte's saying, that's a big one, or me saying that's a big one to do with the washing, or just about anything, to be fair, in general.
He's just mimicking someone. Yeah. That's a big one. That's a big one.
In the bedroom. Oh, God. He's gone off on a tangent.
He's gone there.
Yeah, but he's back on track. Everything he says is genuinely hilarious. And, I said, even when he says pleases and thank yous, and when he, says anything that is out of context that he's just heard people say is so funny. And he makes me laugh 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 million times a day. And, it's that continue. And maybe that's why it's harder to justify why it's so good, because it is consistent.
It's continuous
throughout the day, throughout your life, right? Every day they'll do something great. And that's why, because it's human nature, right? You typically remember the bad things because they're bigger and they're louder in your life. But when something's continuously good, it is harder to pinpoint those things.
Well, it's to just add to your point there. It's like when you don't see someone change really every day when you're with them. But if you haven't seen someone in 6 months, you go, well, you've changed a lot, sort of thing, within that 6 months time, right? Especially a child will change a lot. But if you have not seen someone in a long time or whatever like that, it's that same thing, right? Because it's in your face every single day. You don't typically notice maybe the big stuff, but it's continuous every single day. So yeah, I'm more interested in getting to the bad stuff, Steve. I want to hear what's what you find bad about being a parent, because this is where it's going to get a bit juicy, I think.
Oh, God, okay, all right. If that's what we want to move on to so quickly, fine.
we can circle back. It's absolutely fine.
We're
if you've
not
got more
going to
good things
circle
to
back,
say.
are we? No. Well, I mean, I don't mind taking a first stab at that. I suppose the stuff that, like, I mean, let's talk about holidays. That's a fun one, because this is something that me and Shah, we're always loggerheads about, because Charlotte loves a holiday. Like, if it was up to Charlotte, we go away. Bear in mind she's a teacher as well. Like, we go away every holiday as much as we could. We go abroad, far away, somewhere lovely. And before we had Oscar, we would do that. We went to Barbados, we went to Iceland, went to these brilliant places, and it was awesome. Since then, and it's, she's always had to drag me on holiday anyway, but since then we've just had to consider very different things. I personally don't want to drag Oscar into a totally different time zone, where it's going to totally destroy his sleep pattern. So when we were talking about our honeymoon, for example, which we had last year, it was a case of, what do we do? Do we take a big risk, spend a load of money, go somewhere really far away, and potentially not have a very good time because, he's asleep all day and partying all night, and as the popular culture song goes, I believe, so we decided to go somewhere a lot more local. We went to Crete, and even then it was
local.
Well, in terms
like
of, let me rephrase,
or something would be local. Crete. You still went to Greece.
No,
you could have said France, or something. Greece is still quite far away, and a nice place to go on holiday, might I add.
It's great. Of course, I'm not dismissing it, but in our heads 5 years ago, it was like, oh, let's go to the Maldives, let's do something like really extravagant. But we've had to just shelve that, and it's a case of, we've been away with him twice now, and the plane ride was just about okay. Like, he was, 2-3 hours, and that's it. But then afterwards, you are just in another country with your kid. That's how I see it. Like, it's brilliant to see him. Like, he sees the beach for the first time, he sees the sea, and I believe that that's important for his development more than anything else. Like, he needs to have those experiences, but it does it's not the relaxing sort of, oh, let me just sit down and do nothing for 5 days. Like, that just goes for me.
But you can get those experiences down in Bournemouth for, like, a couple of quid petrol.
You're trying to say that I should have just gone to Bournemouth for a honeymoon?
You should have just gone to Bournemouth, mate. That is local, but
yeah. So that's definitely one. You go next, because I don't want to rattle through all these too quickly.
No. I think it's important. And to be fair, I would jump off the back of that. Like, me and Sam have not been on holiday with our kids yet,
wow.
Which is because it's daunting. Because I mean, not stupidly, but we probably should have gone on more holidays before we had. That's probably one thing that I will say, is that we didn't go on many holidays before we had kids. And we wish that we went on more holidays. I'm not regretful of it, but it's one thing that, if we had a time machine, we'd make the most of that time that we have. And then when we had Zach, it's something that we always put on hold, because of, again, when thinking about it, the holiday that we want is the holiday that we want, the holiday that we're going to get. So when Zach wants to go to bed at 8 o'clock, or has to go to bed at 8 o'clock, or whatever, when he gets tired and wants to go to sleep, you are then forced to retire to your room as well at the same time, right? So he can go to sleep, unless he just sleeps on the floor next to you while you're having a couple of cocktails. But I don't see many parents doing that. So we put that off. And then we decided to have another child before even experimenting going on holiday. So now we've got 2. And now the thought of getting on a plane with 2 kids going away to somewhere is just not overly appealing. I think the stress of it is not worth. I think when you go on holiday, it's an ideal time to sort of completely de-stress, right? Like, reset yourself and de-stress. Doing that with kids, I don't think there's any point going on holiday if you can't do that because you've got kids. Some people can. Some people can switch off. I can't. I'm always like, is he going to fall and slip into the pool and drown? Is he going to crack his head on the side of this? Is he going to do this? Are we not going to be able to have fun? Is he going to interrupt dinner? Is he going to scream on the plane? All of this stuff. I'm like, all of that stuff I'm not willing to risk. The one thing I am looking really forward to is doing stuff like Disney World and stuff, but that comes a bit later. So when he starts to like be like really get excited around certain stuff, that's the part I'm looking forward to. But for now, I think I'll just keep it on hold until he's old enough, maybe 6, maybe 7. I don't know what age kids go to Disney.
I mean, you're right though. It's just like a lot of what we talk about, right? It's really personal in terms of how you're willing to tackle certain situations. So for perspective, and I'm probably going to get maybe some of this muddled up, but some of Charlotte's family, so Charlotte's brother and his partner, they took their children, I believe it was to Vietnam, and there's 3 of them. And I think I can't remember the ages, but they were all under 8. And there's 3. And so and if you ask them, they're like, it was great. Everything's cool. Whether that's like, it was great. Yeah. It's like, or whether it was genuinely, but it sounds like it worked really well. And, that's something like, and respect to those people. If you can do that, good for you. And maybe that, course. Maybe I've just got to, grow a pair a bit and be more adventurous. But for now, like, I just don't feel like I can do that.
You're saying I need to grow a pair as well? Is that
by proxy? Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
No, but I do think it's important, and I really, really should probably try getting them on a plane just to experience, even if it is just
even if it's on their own,
somewhere local, like Crete. Ship them off.
Yeah, just see you later. In proper World War II style, just put a little badge on. They'll come back.
Yeah, but that is a problem that I've not experienced yet. So I'm okay.
Well, I think I think that what regardless of because it's a very privileged issue, isn't it? Not going on holiday. Oh God, how will I survive? But I think some of the bigger areas is just like fundamentally having children impacts your relationship, and some of that absolutely can be negative. And I don't think it's I feel that the strongest couples can acknowledge that to each other in terms of we haven't spent any time alone together in X amount of weeks, months, whatever that looks like. How do we fix that? It's those couples rather than letting it fester. Not that I'm a relationships expert at all, but it's certainly in that first year, I would say, you don't spend a lot of time alone together. You don't go on as many dates. Like, you really have to focus on it. And we do try, and we do try going out once a month, and we do try to do that. And I know some couples do it really well, and some couples do it terribly. So it is about how much you can handle as a person. But
so on that note, then, on that note, I'll ask you, how did you deal with it during the time? Because I've experienced it myself. So it's something that I typically find out a little bit later. When I go, hold on a minute, what's going on here? And then rather than sort of addressing it when it starts to happen, or have that conversation before it happens and saying, look, just so you're aware, this probably going to be, things aren't going to be the same for a little while. Let's just both acknowledge it. I think normally some people let it go a little bit too late, if you know what I mean.
And then it becomes a very awkward conversation. So it's part of the NCT stuff we did anyway. There was a big session on there is going to be negative impact in that sense, in terms of you won't be alone together as much. There's just going to be, you're both going to be really tired. It's going to impact you. So we went into this knowing that this could and will happen. I think you're right. I think especially in those first few months, it's such a blur with learning new stuff and getting distracted. You kind of have to take a back step and go, cool, we haven't been on a date in a few months. And I think as soon as that penny drops, we had that conversation. We kind of had it out. We just so excited. And the thing is, if one of you's thinking it, in my experience, the other one's thinking it as well. Yeah. So you say it and like, oh yeah, I know. And you kind of have that open chat, and it's almost a relief just to acknowledge. As long as you acknowledge it, I think that worked really well for us. We knew there was like, we got to invest some time. And could we properly for the first few months? We felt like we couldn't, but then we did, we eventually worked out a routine that worked really well. Like Charlotte still went out with her friends. I took Oscar. I still went to the gym, and she had Oscar. Like, we worked that out, and then we booked in some time with each other. So it took a bit of time, but it got there in the end. What about you?
Yeah, again, it was quite similar. I would say we let things manifest a little bit too much, but again, it's one of those things that you don't realize you're doing until you're experiencing it. And I think it just got to a stage where, and then you sort of build yourself up, where you probably both build yourselves up thinking, again, as you said, one of you's thinking it, the other one's probably thinking it. But if you don't have that open dialogue, sometimes you like just end up creating these cycles in your head. You're like, oh, is it to do with this, or is there something else and stuff? But we very much like you had a bit of an open conversation, because we used to spend every single day together, do everything together and stuff like that. And to be fair, it was fantastic and great. But it was as soon as there was another person in. Another person sounds like something else. As soon as our son was introduced, it got a bit complex. the postie came in. No, when our son was obviously introduced, it was like a bit of a whirlwind, and you get caught up in all the good stuff and the joy and the lovely stuff, and then you start to realize actually, oh, this hasn't happened, or sort of thing. But we were very good. We were very open and honest, and just had that conversation. And from an early stage, or as soon as we started to realize, and just said, actually, very much like you, we need to be a bit more structured with our days and make more of an effort to spend more time together. And then ever since then, it's not been a problem at all. We found a very, very good routine like you.
Do you think that's how natural that sort of happens naturally, though, doesn't it? Because when Oscar was first born, it kind of it's like you're drinking from the fire hose, aren't you? Like it's like you're learning so much, and then you learn to cope over a period. It's like you learn to cope over a period of time where you can have that open conversation. Like trying to have that, I feel like trying to have that open conversation the first couple of weeks was for me like, well, when do you want to do that? Like it's because everything's it's a very high stress time.
Yeah, I said no initially. I do. The reason why I said no initially is that I've seen where it's gone wrong a lot of times, right? Where they've never really gotten over. And I've seen and heard stories where, for example, I'm not saying this is every case of a man, but in this case it is a man, where they've gotten so upset with their other half not being as sexually active since having a child, where they've taken it personally and they've just gone, right, I'm going elsewhere then. And I think it takes a certain I do think there is that sort of that steep learning curve where you're caught up in a whirlwind, learning so much new stuff and then you start to realize when things become a little bit easier and routine, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, we can sort of fit this in now. But I know for some people it doesn't go that way. And I think it really depends on how much they let it manifest and how much they let it beat itself up. And that's why I think it's important to sort of address it from an early stage and just say, well, it's fine. This is okay. This is normal. Things aren't going to be exactly the same. We might not be as sexually active. I'm not speaking on behalf of myself. I'm just using an example.
Who's this phrase?
It's me, Steve.
He's about 6'2", black hair. What's his software?
Doing a podcast right now. But it's that communication piece, and it's a testament to any strong relationship. And I think that some relationships will fall down without that communication, and then some people maybe use it as an excuse to go, all right, well, I'm out then, sort of thing. So
I think it's piss poor when you see stuff like that. Like in my eyes, like not forgivable. But
see a lot. Definitely see a lot.
Yeah.
But go on. What's some of the other bad stuff?
I had that he's always bloody ill, and it impacts you, because Pinnacle of Health for like 10 years before Oscar, almost from day one, I'm like, I've got a bit of a twitchy throat. What's happening here? And I've been physically sick, like every 3 to 4 months since his birth. We've had so many colds since then, and his nose is running on a daily basis. This probably should be in the Smelly area, but he is always ill, and it's a shame because it's awful to see him ill. Like, and I mean properly ill. I don't just mean a runny nose, because he always has a runny nose. When you see him physically be sick, or when he's coughing so much that he cannot sleep, or he coughs so much that he vomits, I find it really hard. Like, I find it really hard, almost like it cuts me so deep to the core. And Charlotte is so good at it. Like, she's amazing. Like, especially in the night when he like is coughing his guts up. I'm so frustrated because I just can't do anything.
How does she deal with it? Because I won't speak on behalf of Sam, but I don't experience anxiety, right? Pretty much in most situations. Some people say, "Oh, lucky you," sort of thing. But the one thing that triggers me more than anything in this world, and I guess would trigger anxiety in me, is my son or my daughter being ill. To the point of like, I sit there, if I hear one cough, and I'm like, "Oh no, he's ill." And I instantly think the worst thing. And I think that stems from his birth, right? He's being obviously overly cautious around that. But hearing you say that just now, I'm thinking, well, hold on a minute. Maybe it's not just me and thinking because of his birth, related to his birth. So how does Charlotte manage that and not go, whoa, I'd like, think the worst instantly? What does she do to cope with it?
It potentially comes from her knowledge of children in general as being a teacher in primary school for over a decade. So she knows I believe she knows what proper sickness potentially is versus me, who has no experience with this sort of thing. Because you're like, right, he has a cough for a couple of days, and I'm just like thinking, we've got to go, like we've got to do something because this isn't normal, is it? And it's ridiculously normal. Kids get sick, like they have coughs. Yeah. So like probably comes from a place of my lack of knowledge versus she does have knowledge, around what's not normal and what isn't, because she's around kids all the time. She's around sick kids all the time. So I suppose that's where it comes from. And it's very weird, our dynamic, because whenever I'm overly anxious, she's like Mr. Cool, and vice versa. When she's overly anxious, like we always have to try and balance each other out. And
it's really good.
There's a variety of scenarios when that happens, but the one that is just constant is when he's ill, especially when he's coughing or he's sick. Like I just struggle with that more. And again, the noise of him crying cuts through like a chainsaw. And she just has this switch where it's like, this is what children do. Like that's it.
I didn't know that about you, which is interesting, because I thought it was because me and Sam are like that, right? We are extremely anxious when it comes to our children's health. And the fact that you are like that as well, it does open up actually that a lot of people probably think that way. So it is really interesting. And I think one thing is that I always try to rationalize. I'm as I mentioned in the previous book, I typically a very logical person, and I try to rationalize everything. And I go, a cough sounds way worse than it actually is, right? If I had a cough for 4 weeks and I didn't even think anything of it, I probably should have gone to the doctors, but it's one of those things is that I was like coughing. I was like, it didn't do me any harm. I wasn't retching, wasn't doing this and the other. But when you hear your son or daughter cough, it is so different. You're like,
he's dying, 100% guaranteed. I don't need a doctor to guarantee that. Yeah,
you're completely. Yeah, that is one of the negatives of being a parent is, and it's the vulnerability, and I think it comes down. I don't want to like branch off too much, but it's the vulnerability in the way it makes me feel vulnerable. I hate that element of it, right? Because I can deal with anything myself. If it's me and I'm unwell, or I've hurt myself or injured myself, or I'm feeling sick or anything like that, I'm only looking after myself typically. And that's such a comfortable place to be. When you've got something else that you're so emotionally attached to, like to the point that you would do anything to protect, and I mean anything to protect, that makes you extremely vulnerable as a human, right? Emotionally, in a lot of other different ways as well. I don't like that element of it. I like being in full control of my emotions and what I'm capable of. But that for me is a big one, because I've instantly then gone, I've opened my heart to something, and instantly I'm now extremely vulnerable because I'm so emotionally attached to this other thing. My son and daughter.
Creature in the room.
But yeah, that's one for me. It's that vulnerability piece. I still don't like, but again, it comes with the good stuff of being able to love something so much. So I guess it swings in roundabouts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go on. You got any more for bad?
No, I think we've hit on the bad. Yeah, from my side.
Good. I'll continue then. I've got I've got an extensive list.
I've got a catalogue of stuff for bad.
Funny thing, I had to Google good things about being a parent.
Oh, that's woeful. No.
I
get it.
I'm joking. I'm obviously joking. Go on then. What's the last one?
You want to move on to the Smelly? Is that what we're doing?
We can continue on this topic if you wanted to. I was giving us an opportunity to move on. If we
let's move on because this will be fun, I'm sure. I went first on the last one, so why don't you go with the Smelly?
Right, it's where to begin. I'll give you an example. Right, my daughter's going to hate me if she ever hears this in the future.
The internet is forever. Before we say anything further,
she's just she's just turned 1, and she had quite a bad nappy rash, and we advised to give her some nappy free time.
I like how you're whispering. Almost as if
How am I whispering?
No, you're not whispering, but your voice has lowered as if she's in the room.
It's just the frustration because I'm reliving it in my head right now. So we gave her some nappy free time as advised, and we were very cautious. We're like, right, we have to do it after she's done a poo, and her nappy's empty and stuff. Or nappy's full, so we'll make sure we clean her up. And all of a sudden, you're on your phone for 2 seconds. You're looking over, everything's great. You look down at your phone, you look back up, and then all you hear is thud. You're like, oh no, quick! She's done a poo. You're like, oh no, it's on the floor. We got wooden flooring. We can wipe it up. And before you know it, her foot's in it. She's sitting on it, and you're like, how has this escalated this quickly? I literally look down at my phone. Something, yeah, great. I look up and she's like covered on her legs everywhere, and you're like, that sort of stuff can happen on the regular, right? I don't mean like her shitting on the floor, sitting in and stuff. I just mean like those sort of circumstances can happen. Our son is potty trained. Sometimes he might have an accident every now and again, or for example, he's trying to become even more independent now and do stuff like try to wipe his own bum, right? He wipes his own bum. Sometimes he can smear stuff, and you're just going, I'm going to go to the toilet. Go to the toilet. What's that on the toilet seat and on the floor and on the door and stuff like that. These are the things, and we're used to it, right? Because my son's 3.5 years old. We changed 1,000 nappies between then, so we're used to it. But it still doesn't change. Still doesn't change the fact that it's not nice having to constantly go, clean up this stuff every other day.
No, I mean, on a very similar tangent. To be fair, I'm a bit more risky when it comes to like nappy free time. So if I'm changing his nappy, like I'll take the nappy off. I'll let him walk around for a minute whilst I get the other nappy out. Charlotte will come full prepared with the nappy and the cleaning wipes and do it all in one sitting. I'll leave potentially a 30-second to a minute break between nappy coming off, new nappy going on. And one particular occasion, I knew it was going to bite me in the arse. I just hear him go, "Oh no!" And he walks up to me. And I'm like, "You're right, Oscar." And he comes close to me and he gets my hand and he opens his hand and he just hands me this turd from his clenched little fist. And he just goes, and then just walks away. So I'm just holding this little deuce in my hand.
Is that what he was talking about when he said that's a big one? That's a big one.
Yeah, I hope it's shat in our bedroom in the washing basket. Yeah, so he's I mean, poo's kind of the obvious one. I also had quite a niche one, and I don't know whether you had this or not, but
go on.
When Oscar was first born, there's naturally a little bit of umbilical cord left on their stomach, right? I really hope you're nodding because I was like, what the hell are you talking about? That stayed on there, I don't know, for like a week. It stunk. It stunk of fish. Like, it was heinous. It's probably the worst thing I've ever smelled. And the irony is, Charlotte didn't smell it. Charlotte couldn't smell it. It was horrid. And it was just dying in front of my eyes every time I changed. I was like, it's just
rotting flesh that's been inside and attached to another one.
It's
horrible.
I couldn't. I was gagging. I was like, "Bleh," like I couldn't deal. It's the worst, most pungent. I can still smell it now. Like the memories are coming back. It was.
You got it stuck up your nose.
Yeah, it was horrid. How was it for you?
I don't remember any of that. I don't remember.
Oh, great.
I don't remember it smelling. To be fair, I've got the worst sense of smell anyway, but I don't remember Sam ever saying that she could smell fish. Oh, that's a horrible thought, mate.
Yeah.
That is a horrible thought.
Yeah, gross.
I think the only other thing is that the smelly is obviously you said like who's the obvious one? The umbilical cord one is a bit of a
left
bit of a curveball. Yeah. The other smelly one is me. No, but I just mean like sometimes like I'll be someone that would shower every day, like routinely sort of stuff, right? And when you start to have a child and stuff like that, you start to get another, you start to notice that you start to smell. Is it just me?
Mate.
Are we cutting this?
What the fuck?
I've not had time to shower in like a week.
I'm going to call it out now. I've never had a problem with my own personal hygiene since I've had Oscar. That isn't an Oscar problem. That isn't a Zach problem. That's a you problem.
Yeah, maybe just cut this bit.
No one needs to know. No one needs to know that. It's fine.
No, that was just a joke.
Yeah, no one believes that. I will call one more thing out though on the smelly because I think it's important. Is the initial
to the umbilical cord again? It was that bad. You have to mention it twice.
I want to reiterate the point of how bad it was, so everyone at home can really absorb the initial black tar poos in the first like week were, and we managed to cram poo in there twice, but just two different categories. But no, the black tar poos at the beginning, so I didn't know this was even a thing. No one warned me. So I opened the first nappy and I'm like, what is this demon child? Like, why is there black tar coming out of his ass? No one warned me. And then it had to take a midwife to go, oh, that's normal. I'm like, in what fucking world is that normal? But it is medically, so I hear.
Yeah. I'd say that's gross. But it is part of having a children, unfortunately. I don't think there's many things around, like when it comes to being actually sort of gross, apart from like the obvious bodily fluid, vomiting and pooing and piss and all that sort of stuff. All that sort of stuff. Like I don't think there's many other parts that make it gross. I mean, they do stuff like they don't know what they're putting in their mouth. Like they'll drop something on the floor, or they'll find something outside, and instantly it's like, "Ooh, is this edible?" Like you watch, especially my son doesn't do it anymore, but my daughter will like, she'll pick up everything, and her go-to is just like it's like, no, that's not food. But that's how they work stuff out. I guess they're trying to figure out what's. But some of it's like, yeah, a bit nasty.
I mean, I can. Now you've mentioned gross. To be fair, if we're now flirting with the boundaries of what is smelly and what is gross, let's just bucketize them into one. One of the grossest things happened fairly recently. So Oscar sucks his two fingers as like a safety mechanism. I'm sure you've seen it, right? And
probably why he's sick all the time.
He's testing his gag reflex. Basically, on his I think it's his index finger, he has like a little callus where his teeth have rub against his finger, and like it's just a callus. Like it would go away in time when he stopped sucking his fingers. But what happened is he wore it down so much that it sort of cut through the skin, and then what's happened is that's become infected. So I'm gagging at the memory of it. So what happened?
The umbilical cord.
But what happened was that this like big pussy blister just sort of occurred over the top of like the callus, and he was, no matter how much we tried, you can't stop him sucking his fingers. Like he just kept putting this like infect your face. He just kept putting this like blistery finger in his mouth, and then we like every other hour, me and Sharp were like, "Has it popped yet? Has it popped yet?" And one morning we wake up and it's popped. We can only assume in his mouth, but it was so hard to look at. And I mean, it didn't bother him in the slightest. But that's,
you didn't use duct, did you?
We did.
Did you?
But we ended up we only fleetingly and sparingly, because he just sucks his fingers. Like, we never knew he needed it.
But that probably would have stopped that.
Possibly, yeah, but you can't stop him. Like, he sucks his fingers. It helps him sleep. I don't care how many blisters he gets on his fingers. That's his own problem. No, but that's it. End of.
Right, that concludes today's episode. Thank you very much for listening. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, every Sunday we release a new episode, so stay tuned. Take care.